Hi, my name's Guy Merrill. I'm Global Head of Art at Getty Images. I oversee a talented team of art directors who work with some of our best photographers, filmmakers, and illustrators around the world. And it's our job to create imagery that meets our customers' needs and that resonates with authenticity and challenges stereotypes. I also want to introduce Nick Adams from GLAAD.
Hi, I am the Director of Transgender Representation at GLAAD. GLAAD is a nonprofit organization here in the US that serves as a resource to media content creators to help them do a good job of telling LGBTQ stories.
Getty Images and GLAAD came together to work on a project about something that's of huge importance to both of us, namely about representation and more specifically about depictions of LGBTQ plus people. And this is important because the imagery that we see, the imagery that surrounds us everywhere on our phones, our screens, our TVs, on the side of a bus, that imagery matters. And yet every day we're bombarded with harmful stereotypes that don't necessarily represent our reality and have a huge impact on how we think, how we see ourselves, how we connect with other people, and how people connect with brands. When it comes to the LGBTQ plus community, depictions have dramatically evolved only recently. I think it's good to remind people of how far we've come in a short period of time. The first overtly gay person didn't show up in an ad until the mid 90s in a spot for IKEA, and the backlash was swift and quite extreme. And we haven't seen the inclusion of LGBTQ plus people in kind of advertising for another 20 years with any significance. It was really since, marriage equality in 2015 in the States that we really started to see some change. And that's really reflected in very recent changes in Getty Images search patterns in terms of what customers are searching for. In the last year alone, we've seen LGBTQ plus go up, transgender, queer, amongst many other terms. So it tells us that brands are, and businesses are increasingly keen to bring these depictions into their everyday visual language. That being said, research released only earlier this month by a study between GLAAD and P&G for the Visibility Project showed that ad executives are concerned that inauthentic inclusion of LGBTQ plus people would lead to a larger backlash than not featuring them at all. So while the industry thinks it's important to use advertising to support this community, they're fearful about getting it wrong. So, how do we help content creators create that authentic representation? In turn, how do we help brands and businesses feel confident to use it? So that's where Nick comes in. Nick, I think we can both agree that the LGBTQ plus community has been greatly impacted by these harmful stereotypes. Can you explain what you've seen and what you continue to see and how you're seeking to change that?
Yeah, I remember that IKEA ad, and it was two gay men buying a table for a dining room table, and it was such an average, just thing that we do in our daily lives. And it was really wonderful to see. And I'm so happy that we're back to being able to see that kind of inclusion in advertising today. And I really believe that companies and ad agencies should not be fearful of including our community in advertising. That is why Getty Images is here. That is why GLAAD is here. And that's why we've worked on these guidelines to really talk about how to portray lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people authentically and represent all of the intersectional diversity of our community. We want to see images in ads that reflect like the daily lives that we lead, just walking the dog and having a wedding anniversary and raising kids and playing sports, being out with our friends. Not a greater diversity of images than simply like Pride, for example, which is fine, but we do many other things throughout the year other than Pride. And also seeing like all of our community represented, like we come from every racial and ethnic background. We are older, we are younger, we are immigrants, we are people of faith. We want to see, we are people with disabilities. We want to see all the aspects and parts of our community represented. And between the content that Getty Images is creating and GLAAD, we can be a resource to you to help you do a better job of including us in all of your advertising and marketing campaigns. That's what we worked with Getty Images to try to help create guidelines for content creators to make those images. Now we're also working with Getty for the customer side to help them figure out a way to incorporate those in the best possible way. And that's where I think there's such an opportunity. Not only should businesses not be afraid of including authentic LGBTQ representation in their campaigns, but in fact, there's a real opportunity both for the company and for society when these stories are told well.
Like we said before, it's all about confidence. And it's about this allaying this sense of fear. So I think for companies from very small SMBs all the way up to big corporates. It's about giving them the confidence to use this imagery in ways that they hadn't necessarily thought about before, and really assess the visual landscape of the content they're using, and making sure that they're being as inclusive as possible across all their, all the different types of media that they're creating. And so it's really just giving them that confidence and giving them that sense of these kind of small stories and how it can kind of fit into the different parts of work that they do. Again, it's this idea of moving beyond pride parades and also moving beyond kind of young, white, kind of cisgender couples. We're looking for these kind of smaller stories. And I think when brands start to recognize that it's these smaller stories that go across all the different kinds of concepts they're wanting to convey, whether or not it's about, stories around finance or for an insurance company or something about connection or networking. It's these small, relatable, authentic stories of everyday lives. People who are going to work, LGBTQ people who are booking a holiday to go on vacation somewhere, an LGBTQ plus person who runs a small business. It's these small stories that are really going to make a difference. And I think for brands, it's a wake-up call that including LGBTQ plus people in their marketing campaigns doesn't just have to happen one time a year in Pride Month, but can happen year round and should happen year round.
That when companies do include LGBTQ people in their ads, they not only get the benefit of LGBTQ people realizing that those companies are allies to the community, part of the community in some instances, but there's also a tremendous amount of earned media that comes because LGBTQ people are excited about it when companies do it well. So we have seen like such phenomenal reaction at GLAAD to the campaigns that we have worked on, some of them like Pantene, including the Transcourse of LA in a holiday ad, was so like applauded by LGBTQ people and created such goodwill in the community for that brand that while there may be fear of doing it wrong, there's a tremendous benefit and opportunity for doing it right, not only for the brand itself, but to accelerate acceptance throughout the culture and create a better world where, for LGBTQ people to simply exist. So we believe at GLAAD that there's a tremendous opportunity for companies to include these images in a way that is both good for the company and good for the culture, and doing the right thing and being a socially responsible company. And so that's why we're so happy to be working with you, Guy, and Getty Images to help create the imagery that companies are going to need to tell these stories authentically.
We need more representation because the more you have, the less those kind of inauthentic moments, those missteps, or where it's gotten slightly wrong matter, because there's such a breadth of content out there to be covered. And so the more brands are brave about this, the less it matters if they get it slightly wrong.
So Guy, if companies want to be more inclusive and tell LGBTQ stories in their advertising campaigns, like how can Getty Images help with that?
Well, yeah, first, I think, definitely check out these guidelines, which can be found at gettyimages.com/LGBTQ guide. We really want to get these guidelines into the hands of customers and agencies and brands and empower them to use the content to alleviate the fears that we've heard about kind of in, some of those studies that we talked about earlier. There's a huge opportunity here. And I think, again, this is all about confidence and allaying those fears, and getting brands to be using this year round is incredibly important. We're already getting great feedback from the industry on this work, and have been speaking to our customers about what is coming. I'm excited to give us a little sneak peek that we've been supporting Scotiabank on an upcoming campaign that features authentic representations of the LGBTQ plus community. And in line with Scotiabank's commitments to the community, they're already using the LGBTQ plus guidebook and working closely with us to choose authentic representations of the community. And this is, an ever evolving partnership between us, which is exciting. This is really the first stake in the ground, I think, around content creation around this community and making it more inclusive. And so this is really this kind of wake-up call for brands to kind of use LGBTQ content, not just for Pride Month, but all year round.
And to use GLAAD as a resource, and to use Getty Images as a resource, which is why I'm so happy that Mark Getty helped this partnership come into be, and GLAAD's president, Sarah Kate Ellis. They had a magical meeting at Davos, and here we are. So I'm so happy to have worked on this with you, and really happy for the guidelines to be out there. And thank you to the Unstereotype Alliance for having us for this meeting.